Hey, before we dive into this week's episode, if you've been enjoying the show, I'd love your support. Take just 10 seconds to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps others discover the wisdom and inspiration that I share on the Pivot to Balance podcast. Let's build a community of balance seekers together. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to share the love. Now let's dive into the episode. Hello and welcome to the Pivot to Balance podcast. I'm your host, AK, and I hope you're doing well. In a world that pulls us in a million different directions and with a billion distractions, finding balance can feel like an ambiguous quest. Join me on this podcast as I try to navigate life's twists and turns with mindfulness, purpose, and grace. In each episode, we will dive into topics like self-care, personal growth, mindset shifts by sharing practical insights, stories, and maybe even interviews. Get ready to pivot, to recalibrate, and find your balance. Follow the Pivot to Balance podcast, and I will see you on the other side. Welcome back to this week's episode. This week's episode is actually going to be pretty candid because my conversation is going to sound pretty candid because I haven't scripted this and I'm recording this like 1 hour before the episode needs to go live because I just want to talk about this. I discarded the episode that was supposed to be released today, maybe some other time. But today I want to talk about this one. Today we're talking about something that might just be one of the most useful skills you can build in both your personal and professional lives, which is emotional intelligence. You might have heard this term thrown around a lot, but today we're breaking down what it really means and how to boost it. I've got 10 ways, I guess, you can improve your emotional intelligence. And no, you do not need any fancy tools. I'm not going to ask you to download any app. Just yourself and your willingness to try these out. All right, let's start off with a quick, simple one. Pretty cheesy. You might have heard about this before. I really do not like hearing this, but I think it's something I've implemented this past year. I would say past 6 months. But it's mindful breathing. This sounds simple, super simple, but it's huge. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone says something that completely rubs you the wrong way. You feel that heat rising and you're tempted to fire back. Who did you think you were talking to? But instead, try this. Take a deep breath, count to 4 as you breathe in, hold for a moment, and then slowly exhale for 4. I'm actually going to make you do it right now. If you're driving, please do not try this, but let's do it. Take a deep breath, count to 4 as you breathe in. Hold for a moment. And then slowly exhale for 4. This doesn't just feel calming, it actually works by shifting control away from your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, and back to the rational parts. So if you hear me talking pretty good, it's because my rational parts are back because I took such a deep breath. It gives you a moment to control yourself, ground yourself. Just a few deep breaths can make all the difference between a reaction you might regret or a response you'll be proud of. Choose wisely. Now, the second one, practice empathy. Empathy is one of those superpowers in emotional intelligence. Like, have you ever been in a situation or conversation and felt like the other person was just waiting for their turn to talk? I hate that. Active listening, really paying attention to someone's words and emotions, it goes a long way. You guys know that I've been in interviews, right? I've been job hunting. I've felt so not heard and not seen in so many interviews. And then there are some interviews where I'm like, I don't care how this process goes. I actually like you as a human being because you're actually listening to what I'm saying. When you put yourself in their shoes, actually, you're activating areas in your brain that's linked to understanding and feeling emotions. For example, next time someone's sharing a problem, resist the urge to offer solutions right ahead. It's so easy for us to do that, right? When a friend is saying, oh, the meeting sucked, I wanted to say 1, 2, and 3, and they wouldn't let me do that. And I just feel so not seen. We would immediately say something like, you should stand up for yourself. You've got to hold your ground. Nobody is asking for your solutions. Just reflect back what they're feeling. You could say something like, you seem really frustrated. I'm sorry that happened to you. I know this sounds too corny when you say it, but I've been in situations like this, and when I say things like that, it opens up more space for the conversations to get deeper. And it shows the other person that you're fully tuned in. The fourth one is to reflect on past experiences. Reflecting on how you handled things in the past can actually be a pretty powerful tool. Think back to a time when you reacted in a way that you weren't happy with. Maybe you snapped at someone, or maybe you just shut down and avoided a tough conversation. These are all very much like human tendencies. We do this. But ask yourself, why did I react that way? What was I feeling? And how can I handle it differently next time? This process, even though it's pretty tough, it actually strengthens the hippocampus, which is a part of your brain responsible for learning from experiences. It's almost like emotional training for your brain. So next time in a similar situation, you would be better prepared to handle it because you'll be like, oh my God, I've learned my lesson. I can't do the same thing again. The fifth one, which is kind of similar, which is pause before reacting. This is something I practice every day for as long as I've been alive, I guess, because I've watched two kinds of people. I've watched people walk away from conversations when it's like getting too much. I've watched people stay there, react, hold their ground. And I've decided that the first one is actually pretty fun and also pretty productive. When something intense happens, take a pause before you react. It's amazing how much difference a few seconds or a few minutes can make. Think about this. Let's say you receive an email which says, as per my last email, that is okay, passive aggressive, thank you very much. Your immediate reaction is to write back defensively. But instead, try this. Walk away from the desk. Go grab a cup of water. Go grab a cup of lemon water. Come back with fresh eyes. Talk to someone else. Don't bitch about that person. Just go talk about something else. This pause lets your brain's emotional center cool off, and it allows your decision-making skills to kick in, because your decision-making skills when you're emotional is like, wow, drama, goodbye. We need to bring that decision-making skills back. I found that in almost every situation, my response is more thoughtful and productive when I give myself even just a few seconds. And of course, we're all humans. There are going to be moments when we slip, but that is why we're listening to this episode, because we want to be emotionally intelligent and reduce the occurrences of those things to the minimum. All right, the sixth one, set aside time for self-reflection. You know, I love my self-reflection. It's the most toughest thing to do in the world, but it's your personal growth engine. At the end of the week, I take some time to ask myself questions like, how did I handle my emotions this week? This is one of my favorite questions to ask myself, even if it's not like taking a journal and writing it down, which again will help you a lot better because you'll see patterns. But I generally ask myself questions like that too. There's also something about putting your thoughts on paper that gives them structure. If you're someone that likes to write stuff down, and if you can actually keep a journal and keep all of these thought processes there, because when you write about your emotions, it's like you're mapping out your brain's reactions and helping yourself make better sense of them. But of course, that's totally optional. If you can just ask yourself these questions, that will be pretty helpful too. The seventh one is challenge negative thoughts. And I mean that in the sense of, if you've ever caught yourself saying things like, I always mess up, they're probably judging me. I will say one thing with the whole job hunt that I've been on. There have been times where I felt like I could have done better. I should have done better. I should have said this. I should have said that. Those things are out of your control. What you wanted to do, what you are, all of those things are out of your control. Because our brain loves to create these little loops of negative thinking. But the thing here is those thoughts are not facts. So the next time you notice a negative thought creeping in, try challenging it. Ask yourself, is this true? Or is there another way to look at it? Because that's growth mindset. By doing this, you're actually rewiring your brain to adopt a more balanced perspective. Anything that negative happens in your life, if you look at it like in terms of, okay, this is happening for me, not to me. If you look at it in the sense of, what's the other perspective? I'm only looking at it from my perspective. Let's say you receive a job rejection. Don't take it personally. Maybe they had someone that's exactly the right fit. How do you know that? Yes, you are great. Nobody's denying that. But if you look at it from the perspective of, people don't really care that much as you think they do. Hey, if you listen to this podcast, I think you will also love my newsletter, Elevate Gazette. I talk a lot about elevating your professional and your personal lives. Make sure to subscribe to my newsletter. Go to anushakhannan.com/email list, and I'm sure you will love it. Join everyone who is like-minded. And now let's get into the episode. The eighth one is develop curiosity about emotions. One of the best things you can do for your emotional intelligence is to become curious about emotions, not just yours, but also about others. If you feel angry, ask yourself, what's underneath this? Because sometimes anger is masking fear or insecurity. When you dig a bit deeper, I've honestly become creepily good at this. And of course, there's a lot more to learn. But I've been doing this for the last 6 years. I do not keep count, but I'm saying it's 6 years. I've started to see I can recognize people pretty well, and my emotions too. I know exactly what I'm thinking. I know exactly why I'm reacting, what this is triggering, everything. But I think when you get a little bit curious, you start to see that emotions are more layered than they seem. Being curious rather than judgmental creates a growth mindset around emotions, which can actually lead to better, deeper understanding and control. Last 2 points. The ninth one is my favorite. I've talked about this so many times on the podcast, which is practicing gratitude. I know, the 5-minute journal. I'm not here to say just about that, which is pretty great, actually. Intelligent Change should actually be sponsoring this podcast. Anyways, gratitude is more powerful than we give it credit for. Honestly, regularly taking time to focus on what's going right versus what's going wrong can literally change your brain. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude releases dopamine and serotonin, those feel-good chemicals that actually lift your mood. One of the easiest ways that for me, basically, when I gratitude journal, I've been doing it for so long that it's become a habit. But there are days when I'm literally in tears. I'll go back and open that journal to be like, oh my God, 1, 2, 3, I have so many things to be grateful for. Even if it's not something that's helping you realize in the moment, which I understand if you're doing it daily on a daily basis, it can sometimes be like, okay, this feeling is not really feeling or making me feel anything. It's okay. Sometimes when you go back, it can help you. We talked about it before too, going back to things you were handling before. And this can also be sort of the thing that you do. It helps you maintain a positive emotional baseline, which makes it easier to handle stress and challenges because you have this balance. The 10th one, which is the most important one out of all the things we've talked about, which is basically surrounding yourself with emotionally intelligent people. This is a tough one. It's not easy to find emotionally intelligent people. Think about the last time you were around someone that just understood you, that just would make you feel grounded, calm, centered, and then you became the same way too. So grounded, so calm. That's the power of social learning. If you can, try to build relationships with people who are emotionally balanced and positive, whether it's a friend or family member or mentor. These people set a great example and help reinforce your own emotional growth. And I understand it's tough to find people like that. I basically have 1 or 2 people in my life like that. But I also find emotionally intelligent people in terms of podcasts, articles that I read, books that I read. Even those things can help you. But I would say stay away from people that are very emotionally immature because, and I'm not saying this in a negative sense, some people are, and that's something that they will grow up, that's something that they will mature. It takes time, but sometimes that can kind of weigh you down. So pick and choose. So that is what I had for this week's episode. Honestly, a very candid one, just me on a microphone talking. These are 10 ways to boost your emotional intelligence. It's honestly a skill that you can build over time. And each one of these practices can help shape your brain to become better at managing, understanding, and expressing emotions, which are super important for any leadership roles. And honestly, just as a human being too. It's a journey, but every small step adds up. You know, I'm all about the journey. I'm not about the destination. So thank you for listening to this week's episode. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. And go grab a cup of lemon water, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.